listening to a
Happy
Raspberry
1st of April.
podcast.
We promise right up that we may share a few laughs, but we're never going to try and fool you. Take it with a grain of salt because you know what day today is, but we're not going to do that. That kind of thing's for suckers. We're not suckers, neither are you. What is definitely not a joke is that today's Monday. It's 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. We're here. You're here. That must mean it's time for Mission Log Live. It's really live, not a fool. I'm Norman Lau.
And I'm John Champion, and you have once again landed where you should be on the live show, where we all kick back and talk Trek and whatever else is on your minds. Tonight, we've got a moment to catch our breaths and look back at the last few months and take stock of the present and look ahead at the future of our favorite sci-fi franchise. So click the Zoom link or give us a call at 669-900-6833 because we want to hear from you.
And we'll be joined by an expert in the field. Some say the expert in the field, especially where we're sitting. We have our very own Dr. Trek, Larry Nemecek, standing by to help all of us make sense of where Star Trek is, where it's headed in the quote unquote state of Star Trek. And maybe he'll help smooth a few cannons as well.
No, that's why we call him. Yeah, we need canon smoothing. He's here for it. So you know what to do. Don't be shy with your opinions or your insights or your burning questions. Earl is here patiently holding down the Earl Green room. So why not make his night and give him a call? Again, just click on the Zoom link or give us a call at 669-900-6833.
Because the time to do it is now. All those numbers are real numbers. Those aren't April Fool's numbers. So click the thing, dial the thing, say hi to Earl, get into the green room, catch up with Earl while you're waiting to talk to Dr. Trek, maybe talk to John, hopefully talk to me, say hi to all of us in chat as well.
That's all we want. We just want people to say hi. And by the way, I solved the technical difficulties that I was having last week. I got the chat to load this time, so now my windows are cleanly displayed where I can see everything. And I would like to welcome a few people to the show. We have Sci-Fi Mombi right at the start saying hello to Mission Log. That's us. We got Scott Palm. We got Paul Harveth. We got John Arminio saying greetings, noble Trek fans. Glad to be back for Mission Log Live. And we are very glad to have you, John Arminio. It's been a while. We've got Paul Troutwine. Is there going to be a third Paul? Oh, there he is. I see a third Paul. We got Paul Wright. We have a Paul Fecta tonight. And he even calls it out. He's replying to Paul Troutwine, we have achieved Paul Fecta status.
Yep.
We got Alan, we got Jane, we got BC shouting out with an Alamarane.
Of course.
How dare you?
Count to three.
Dare you? Yeah. We have Andrea, we have, let's see here, we got Eddie. So everybody, welcome to the show. And before we get into it with your comments and Dr. Trek about the state of Trek, Norman, why don't you tell everybody where they should be catching up with us at Roddenberry Podcasts?
Yeah, I mean, definitely follow us and all the podcasts at podcast.roddenberry.com. Make sure to also like and subscribe to our content on youtube.com/Roddenberry Entertainment, because that's where a bulk, if not all of our recorded materials are posted on YouTube. So liking, subscribing, and sharing all helps the visibility and the algorithm get us up in all of your feeds. And that's exactly where we want to be. That's where you want us to be. So make sure you do that. youtube.com/Roddenberry Entertainment.
Yes, and so follow us there, podcast.roddenberry.com and youtube.com/Roddenberry Entertainment or Roddenberry Prod. Either one will work. Coming up on the live show next week, we begin our weekly look at Star Trek Discovery Season 5. And yes, we're saying goodbye as that show ends its run, but we are saying hello again to our returning guest host, Holly Amos. So Norman, you and Holly will be taking that show while I am traveling back to LA that day. Cannot wait to hear what you have to say and what our audience has to say. Really looking forward to that.
It's pretty awesome. Yeah. 10 years later, we're at season 5. So fantastic. Right.
Yeah. It seems like that, doesn't it? We do have some callers lined up already. So get ready for Alan. Alan and Nani and Paul H. and John Arminio. So cannot wait to hear what all of them have to say, and I cannot wait to hear what the rest of you have to say. So if you haven't dialed in, please do so, because, look, this is your time right now. We're all getting caught up, and we're getting geared up for what the next season of Star Trek Discovery will bring. But it's not just that. It's everything else in the Trek world that has been announced lately. And see, David already in the chat, he's saying, if this is a State of the Trek event, Larry should be making a speech with John and Norm sitting in chairs behind them. Occasionally, John should clap or Norm should clap, but the other should sit there stoically. I think that's good. Like if Larry says something controversial, then like you get up and clap, and I'll say maybe I'll rip up a paper at the end.
We'll get there. The night
We
is
will.
young. Yeah.
We will, yeah. All right, so with that, let us welcome our special guest. You know him, you love him, you don't know what to make of him, but he is our very own resident Dr. Trek. It is Larry Nemecek, host of the Trek Files. And by the way, not to toot our own horns, but we've had a really nice run on the Trek Files lately with some great guests. I am so happy about that interview that you did with Rod a couple of weeks ago. I've been trying to encourage people to listen to that because he was so excited about that document.
He was. Well, hi, guys. I guess
Hi,
we're here.
Larry.
Hi.
Yes,
Yes, I'm
you're
on
on.
the road, if you can't tell. Here, lately of Anaheim, which doubles secretly in the multiverse as Starfleet Academy for all Star Trek series. Actually, still shot in California. It's it's Starfleet headquarters.
Wait, which is how many?
Oh, zero now.
Yeah,
one
zero
prior.
at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, important incoming message from Mark, part of our Patreon community. He's got a food update for me. He's having a cupcake covered in chocolate sauce. So good work, Mark. Thank you for keeping me abreast.
Remember, pics or it didn't happen.
Yeah, that's
right?
true. That's
Yeah.
true. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Larry, that's already one of the interesting things about the state of Trek is that most of it is coming out of Canada. Although the offices, the executives, and the decisions are being made here, but they are being shot in Canada. Have you considered doing a Trekland tour of Toronto?
We actually, so Terrace Cassidy, who came up with this idea 10, 12 years ago in a big tour format. I do the day tours now with my Treks, but he's in Canada, he's in Alberta, and we've talked about starting to ramp up. I think it takes a while for all the sites to marinate with people. It's going to take a while for anything in Toronto area gets up to Vasquez Rocks level, or even the Tillman Water Plant Starfleet level. But no, it's there. We'll see how everybody's emotional attachment to things Canadian goes.
Right. Yeah.
I have to believe a lot of this is obviously there are financial decisions being made, but then you're seeing like a lot more and more Canadian casting choices or talents, being, inserted there. So it is kind of neat, though. You're seeing a little bit more of a global perspective involved, in the production of Star Trek as opposed to a Hollywood centric one.
Well, a lot of that's by law. They have to have a certain percentage of local talent, either on camera and behind the scenes talent, come from Canada, or it's the inverse. They can only import so much foreign, and if foreign is all American, then they have legal things that way. No, our good friend Dave Blass told me when I used to whine a lot when Discovery first hit the stream waves. And people said, God meant for Star Trek to be free. I don't want to have to pay for it. I said, forget that. God meant for Star Trek to always be filmed in LA. And I was sad to see. But Dave Blass said, what's happened? It literally costs, same scope of show, same budget. It costs 4 to 5 times more to film in LA than it does Toronto.
Wow.
So I've thrown in the towel. I said, okay, until the economics change, they're going to be Canadian, apparently.
Can we, that is one of the state of Trek issues that has been, ongoing since 2016 with the announcement of Discovery premiering on CBS All Access, now Paramount Plus. Now, of course, Prodigy has moved over to Netflix, and depending on the market where you are, where in the world you are, you may get your Trek from one of a few different streaming services. If we look at the state of Trek overall, do you think that people have kind of resigned themselves a bit easier to streaming being the reality? Do you think that there's, I know the answer is market confusion. Yes, when you spin off one show to one place and it's not in another place. What do you think is the feeling among the fandom right now about our streaming reality?
I think that was a hurdle that just needed to be passed through. There were just so many it was of a new show, a new look, a new technology, new delivery system. And there were a lot of, I mean, for all the vitriol that the opening of Discovery brought out, there was just, I just remember being struck by how much confusion there was. There were a lot of people that were wanting to watch Discovery. I was at a convention, and these were not grandparents. These were people in their 40s and 50s, and they had a daughter. And they said, we want to watch Discovery. We remember how it premiered. They said, we watched the first hour on CBS, and then it went somewhere else. And I guess we'll never see it again now.
Yeah.
I mean, there was really but that was 7 long years in a pandemic ago. And I think we've turned that corner on the sophistication.
Well, I don't know. I mean, like with Prodigy right now in France, I mean, there are a lot of fans out there and thankfully they're being really loyal to the Hagemans and to Aaron Waltke and their request to not spoil it out there. But after doing some due diligence out there on social media, I mean, France has legally the right to stream Star Trek Prodigy season 2. And the interesting thing is that, if you really check like your feeds, you don't really see a lot of spoilers out there. So I think there's something about, seeing it done or broadcast or, discussed in the right way as opposed to, but I'm not saying it's not the right way because it's legal. You can't say it's illegal when it's legal.
Someone let a loophole get through the contracts, right?
Yeah. Well, and in the last 20 years, my French has gotten really terrible. So even if there were spoilers coming my way, I couldn't read them. So I guess that's all right. But yeah, that's kind of that double-edged, right? It's that double-edged sword, though, with I think we had all wished that a show like that would be understandably easily accessible in one place, right? And that would be fantastic. But there's also a benefit to a show like that being non-exclusive in foreign markets. So one place can buy it. So you have the French station that picked it up. That's terrific. But then maybe in Belgium and Germany or Italy, another outlet could buy it. So they can keep reselling that show. The more they resell the show, the better it looks on paper to greenlight a 3rd season if we ever get to that.
Yeah, I get the idea that I was talking to someone the other day. It's almost like the 70s again when the original Star Trek was being picked up around the world. Someone told me a few years ago that if you look, the big foreign markets outside the US and Canada are, UK, Germany, and Australia. And those were the markets where the national or the local network at the time treated it as an adult show. And most of the world treated it as kiddie sci-fi and put it on in the morning or or whatever the equivalent, whatever communicated to their audiences that this is a kid's show. They didn't put it in prime time. They didn't put it in adult hours. And I almost feel like not that same dynamic, but I feel like the French, whoever the channel that bought this, they contracted, they thought it was hot. It was a kid's show. It was animated, but I don't think they thought in terms of this is part of a franchise and there's a whole world watching and the global end of it. And if the contract didn't specify, they're within their rights. I just think they're thinking very provincially about it, and not that, oh no, we're harming they've invested. They've got a right to do it. They're going to go do it. And the last thing on their mind is that there's some part of a, not contractually bound global movement that they're. It's like the inverse of when they promoted Discovery in the UK, right on the Netflix, the original carrier, and then the Paramount Plus plan came along. And 2 days after promoting it in the UK, they jerked it away. And all the European fans, the UK fans, were mad because they had to wait 9 months for it's like the French situation is like the inverse of that.
Right.
So it's like it's out there and everybody's trying not to watch it.
Well, so that's the thing, Larry. In the state of Trek, so there's a certain protectivism about every series. And now yet there's a secondary layer of protectivism in terms of release and distribution. So is that compounding kind of like the fans siloing around not only the series that they love or series that they love, but then all of a sudden like, well, we got it first. So we are the greater fans, right? Our market is the stronger market because that's what we need right now in Star Trek is more, divisiveness.
Fan division.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, I think the bottom line here is just the fact that, it's France.
You own that one. You own that.
I love our
Apologies to
French
all of
fans.
our
I'm
French
in.
listeners.
Yeah.
Well, hey, let's jump over to
Send
Alan.
them my
who's
way.
been-
No, I'm totally kidding.
Alan's been waiting patiently. What's on your mind tonight, friend? Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute.
I'm confused, guys. I thought this was Lido Deck live.
Oh,
and
Yes. Oh my God. I'm so sorry. There was some kind of a mix-up.
yeah,
Yeah, Bill and Dan were unavailable, and we missed our date. So
I was really looking forward to State of Love Boat conversation, and
Yeah.
now we're gonna have to make do with what is Star Trek. So
if you bear with us, we'll get back to Love Boat. I
Okay.
think I want to say we were up to episode 250. If I'm not mistaken, Ace had already joined the crew.
okay.
So you know that you're going to have a good time when you've got Ace on board.
Yep.
Sadly, we lost Julie, but we gained the Love Boat Mermaids. So there's
Sure
a
thing.
lot of trade-off.
What's our Charo count now? Where are we up to?
I think we're up to about an 8 in our Charo count.
Okay.
I think we're good for at least 2 more. Florence Henderson staying very tight with that
Very good.
record. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
toy.
So,
Remember
go ahead.
also the Love Boat Mermaids. They gave us Terry Hatcher, so there's
Yeah.
Hey,
there's +1 to the casting there, and also not to confuse the Charo count with a churro count, because also
No.
very good on the Pacific Princess lines, the
Yes.
churros.
Very
Charo
good.
count's very high in
Yeah.
Anaheim.
Yeah.
Right? Exactly. That's exactly where Larry is right now. He should be having a churro.
You should be
Right
counting
now.
churros.
Exactly.
I don't see. No.
Yeah.
I can't keep up with you guys. I know the mystique that's around the Love Boat now, but I'm of the generation that like watched it and endured it and thought it was like the weak sister to Fantasy Island, because that had
How dare
Ricardo
you.
Montalban.
We can
How
cut your video
dare
right now.
you, sir.
I know.
Earl can
I'm-
hit
hey,
one
you know,
button and you're gone.
You want the hard
Yeah.
facts here. Come on.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Oh my
right.
goodness.
We do want the state of the Love Boat as well,
We do.
Absolutely.
followed by
I
the
will-
state of Star Trek.
I will try to muddle through the Star Trek talk as well. I think
Bear
I
with
think
us
I'm
if you
fairly-
can.
Please.
If you
yes, I will
can.
do my best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just it's it's a good week to look ahead, though, considering that we've got Discovery coming up. I'm very excited to get back to these characters and the ones who sort of kicked off the streaming avenue for Star Trek, like you guys have been talking about. It's definitely been an adjustment, but one that I think overall, we've kind of gotten to this place that we're kind of used to and kind of expecting it to be this way now, with a lot of franchises. And, for me, Star Trek was kind of the first one that made that jump. So
I'm going to ask the big bad question here, which is for Star Trek Discovery specifically, because we're leading into its 5th season. This is the first of the new shows to have been other than Picard. Picard, they started and said you're only getting 3 seasons, so that was a planned thing, right? Discovery, this is the first show now that we have had an unexpected end to its run. So let me ask the panel here. Too soon? Too late? Just right? Did it overstay its welcome? Did it understay its welcome? How are you sizing it up?
The panel.
That's hard to say without seeing the 5th season.
Yeah.
We don't really know where the story is going, and I think that it has been leaked that there was kind of like there was an abrupt end or an abrupt decision. Or Larry, you can probably talk a little bit more academically about this, from behind the scenes, But it's hard to say, because I'm not exactly sure if their serialization was as carefully mapped out, or if it needed to be, or if that's what they were going for. With streaming, it doesn't really feel like there's a beginning or end to it. You just start watching and you stop watching. So, there are some people that haven't even seen any of this at all. They're just going to end up watching it, and they're like, well, if they consume it all at once, is it too quick? If they, put it in a queue, is it too long? You know what I mean? It's like, we don't know if it's drawn out. And I haven't watched, to be honest with you, I haven't watched a lot of it, since we covered it on Mission Log Live, and for the show. So there are people who are saying, I get so much more out of it watching it in a binge format because everything seems to just seamlessly work together, as opposed to having these huge gaps of time, that are separating every series, like a year sometimes. So that really does kind of like crush the consistency a little bit.
You're talking season to season versus episode to episode in a season,
right?
Which I agree. Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. Give us our 3-month summer hiatus again, and then get back again. Not this year-long.
Yeah, it's tough.
And that's the thing. I purposely fed you, an unfair question, because this is new territory for Star Trek, where we've had the luxury of these 26 episode long seasons for multiple seasons. And now not only do you have much shorter seasons, but a bigger gap in between those seasons.
Some would say too short a season.
Oh, very good. Very good.
It was right
TNG
there. It was
title. Nice. Yeah.
It was easy.
And I think it really is this double-edged sword where, again, you've got the luxury of writing a season-long arc, for better or for worse. We could talk about the artistic merits of that. But then the problem of feeling very, for me anyway, separated from the last season or the season before by the time you get into a new one.
Yeah.
So whereas Discovery will end with only 58, nearly 60 episodes, just shy of 60 episodes, I think. That's basically a little more than 2 seasons of classic Trek. That's 2 seasons of TNG or DS9.
Right.
But that's 2 seasons spread out across 7 years. So it's a different kind of dynamic with its own audience. And I don't really know what the right answer is. Is the right answer, will you keep it going until you hit some magic arbitrary number like 100? You just see how long you can keep it going? Or do you do it and make a splash and then cut it while it's hot?
Well, I mean, Larry, I think you were there. I'm sorry, Alan, 1 second.
No worries.
I'm just saying that, I'm sure Larry has seen this. You were probably at the same party that Scott Bakula was at when they wrapped Enterprise, and someone asked him in his interviews, so are you upset that you only made 4 seasons? Because, you had TNG at 7, you had DS9 at 7, you had Voyager at 7. Yeah, it was the 777, and then Enterprise only had 4. Which in some fans' minds, or at least in the media's minds, they say, well, that's obviously a failure because you didn't reach 7, you didn't reach your syndicated number. And Scott Bakula is like, are you kidding me? I got 4 seasons, full seasons of TV.
Yeah,
as a career, and as part of my career and later part of my career, right? So, where did this take root? The 777 is if you don't hit 7 seasons at 26 episodes per season, you know what I mean? It's arbitrary.
Well, look, I mean, the original series was just 3. So, I mean, there's so much, ironic about that. So, 4 seasons for Enterprise. Well, they went one more than the original. But the whole 7 season thing was purely sitting down in 1987. And we talk about this on the Trek Files when we get into that syndication. Paramount invented first run syndication because syndication had been game shows and talk shows and soap operas. And first run drama was a completely new thing, and they did that to avoid getting network notes and being on the bubble constantly because it's Star Trek, and they wanted to control the series, and they did. And then DS9 was that way, and then they launched UPN, the little network with Voyager. But that whole 7-year was also part of 26 episodes a year, 7 years, $1.5 million an episode to begin with. It was all just one big accounting algorithm. Just all it was. They just picked those numbers arbitrarily. A lot of network TV then and since they talk about 22 episode years as the old long seasons, and I always go, and Star Trek did 26, but that was purely a mathematical construct they came up to budget and project into the future with.
Wow.
But now everybody thinks of that as the norm. I mean, it would be great. But it is funny when these current series talk about their 5 seasons and their 4 seasons. You say, it's really only a season and a half, or it's only two old seasons. It's like 2 English versus 5 in metric season. I don't know what that is.
And as John Cooley is pointing out here in the chat, 100 episodes used to be the threshold for perpetual syndication. Of course, now the syndication model is gone. So if you have a show, well, you can still sell it multiple times on streaming platforms and downloads, etc. That just kind of never goes away, whether it's a 6-episode run or a 150-episode run.
Which is how Enterprise leveraged that for season. The Paramount TV studio wanted to have 100 episodes because it was still the factor to think, and the UPN network was ready to cancel. So that's the thing of the left hand, right hand. It's supposed to all be the same corporation.
Right.
But that was the 100 episode limit was still in people's mindsets in 2005.
Yeah. Alan, I'm going to ask you if you have a thought on that, and then we'll jump over to our next caller real quickly here before the break. Yeah.
No, I guess I feel like kind of as a sci-fi fan, I've been a little bit, steeped into the we're going to have to wait a while mantra for our content. Even going back to like supposedly the cheap sci-fi shows that they produce, in Vancouver, those would often have like year-long breaks in between. And, those were sort of like, we're just that's cheap content, but it still takes a while. Doctor Who, God knows how long it's been, incubating, the stuff that they're going to be putting out this year. With Discovery, I am looking forward to it. I certainly wish it could have gone on longer. There is a small part of me that says, well, they did tape and they did record endings that were more open-ended, and maybe if this does well, they'll reconsider and switch back to that version of the final episodes, and maybe we can get a little bit more out of this sucker. But if it turns out to be 5 and it's 5 quality seasons, and I think that it took a little bit of time to get its feet under it, but the last couple seasons that they've been in the far distant future, I think have been some of the best Star Trek that I've seen in a long time. I'm very much excited and looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to Section 31, and I'll say this: the Mean Girls movie was only going to be a streaming show. They made it for 30-something million. It made 100 million at the box office. Maybe that could be a way to justify a little bit more production of Star Trek if they could get some box office bucks out of it. I'm just saying.
I like what you're thinking here. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So, somebody from Paramount is listening. All right.
Yeah. With that,
Alan, hey.
Anchors away.
Out of sight.
Right.
All right.
Thanks, Alan.
Yeah,
Larry, you're not the only doctor that we get to welcome into the show tonight. We actually are welcoming a special guest. She has not called in before, so tonight we're very happy to welcome the professor of the psychology of Star Trek, University of Hawaii. Welcome, Dr. Nani. Welcome. How are you?
Oh,
Hi.
wow. Hi.
John, I figure you've been so sweet to show up to my class so many times and be there for
show
my
up to
students that it was at the very least, the reciprocal thing to do was to show up. You're too far away to bake for, so I had to find something else to do.
Mahalo.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Well, welcome to the conversation. And you, of course, get to tackle Star Trek from a different angle than we do every week. So everybody's saying hello to you here in the chat. So, by the way, yeah. So welcome. But what is on your mind tonight? State of Star Trek or Trek in general?
Well, the only thing, I think that's the thing I've been thinking about is, believe it or not, to the people listening, when I have this psychology of Star Trek class, the overwhelming majority of students who sign up are not already Star Trek fans. There's usually a small percentage who are, and they get super excited when Rod shows up to class. But the overwhelming majority are looking at it as, oh, this looks like a good advanced topics writing intensive class that doesn't look like I have to read a book for. I get to watch TV. And so I kind of feel like I'm doing my tiny little part by bringing in, new Trek fans every semester. I mean, I know that Starfleet Academy, that's a new one, right? That's supposed to be aimed more at like young adults. To me, Star Trek is more life philosophy than it is just, a TV show or a number of series. What else can we do to get more Star Trek fans? Because if we want that future world, we have to start prepping it now.
Yeah.
Well,
you're certainly doing your part. And I love that there are students who come to you who are not Star Trek fans, but they probably leave the class, if not as fans, certainly as admirers and appreciators of Star Trek. So that's great. You're doing your part. I'm wondering for you on the other end of it, though, are you learning from your students? Like whenever I show up for a class, I'm amazed at how many of them will discover all these nuanced and deep, thoughtful concepts that they can share with me, share with you. So what have you learned from handling this class every week?
Well, the first time I did the classes back in 2019. Actually, last week was my 5-year anniversary of the first time Rod showed up in person. And then today is our 4-year anniversary, John, right? So
great. Yeah.
First time you showed up to my class, which was of course pandemic, so Zoom.
Right.
But I've been doing it for a while, and I tend to do a lot. Especially if there's been a little bit of a break, I tend to do a lot of the same episodes because I do a lot of the the really moving ones, the ones that are going to turn them into Trek fans. And so it actually has gotten to the point where I still get surprised, though, because students will come up with terms that I have never considered. I've watched these shows more times than I can remember. And students will say things, and I never looked at it that way. And it's just, I don't know whether it's the younger perspective or not necessarily sci-fi or not Trek perspective, but they can see connections and things that I just didn't put. Like last week we did, what did I do last week? Last week was Inner Light. And they're supposed to be doing psychology terms, right? That's the idea. They find 4 concepts, ideally psychology concepts, although I let them do societal implications. And one student actually used the term heaven to describe, the state that Picard was in. Someone else had used coma, which, also fits, but one student used heaven, and she was, citing the Bible, and she's like, and I don't know if I'm going to get it, credit for this one since it's not technically, follow. I'm like, well, I asked you to find a term and to back it up with evidence and cite where you got it from, like you did all those things,
Nice.
So that no one had ever said heaven before when talking about Inner Light to me. So that one definitely was not a perspective I had considered before. So.
Very cool.
Well, you know what Kirk said to Scotty in Star Trek V about fresh minds, young perspectives, or whatever the line is.
Be patient.
And that's what's that's why I love talking to foreign fans, global fans, and all the ages now, because everyone's part of their own culture and time. And it's, if there's all kinds of gatekeeping going on. And one of the most insidious and the most innocent sounding is the longtime fan that can hold that up a little bit to someone that's just coming to the show. And I try to see what people are bringing to it. And you're in such a great position whenever you've got that and you've got students. I love the fact that most of your students aren't fans, because you're getting that fresh perspective with new eyes. I envy you. I'm trying to run around and get people to come to a panel or get people to come to an online location and do that. And you're getting it every week. That's going to be enriching and eye-opening.
It is. And I have to also admit the number of people who say they want to sit in. And of course, I have to limit that because it is a classroom. But to have a class that people want to come to when they don't necessarily get credit for it, I in fairness, don't want them to do the writing because I'm already doing a lot of reading. And my students these are senior level students, essentially. So each student is doing 3 pages of writing a week. One of which is an annotated bibliography, so it's technical writing, and that's just one of my current 6 classes. So that's a lot. So I don't mind when people kind of stop by, but it's fun. I managed to find a way to bring up my Star Trek class in almost every conversation when I run into someone I haven't seen in a while. It's amazing how Star Trek comes up. I was like, oh yeah, and then in my Star Trek class.
Well, see, and the ripple effect, Nani, is going to be those students that say they're not Star Trek fans, then they're open to watching, but they're not really fans. When they're off in their tribe, in their circles, and they say, yeah, I was in this Star Trek class, and they suddenly have some friend that they had no idea was a fan, but one of their regular friends pipes up, says, "You're in a Star Trek class? How do you know?" And they find out that they've got a secret closet Trek fan in their circle of friends. I mean, I bet that's happening all over the place.
I'm sure you're right. That's happened. I have a student from, I think it was back in 2020. She had a couple of majors, and so she's finally finishing up this year with a couple of bachelors, actually. And she was saying that because she's one of her areas is gender studies, and every new gender studies class she's in, she brings up The Outcast, because that was one of the first ones I had them watch, because it's The Outcast in past years, before I even had Psychology of Star Trek, I would have my introductory psychology students, when we're in the social psych chapter, I would actually show it in class. And I remember the first time I did it, like with the overhead projector on the big screen, and I'm sitting there going, oh, this is fun, because I'm watching the Enterprise, going halfway across the classroom. And she shares that with all of her friends. And I was talking with a social worker the other day, explaining that in the class, the point of the class, part of it's I want to be able to do Star Trek and call it work. But the other part is that, I'm actually teaching students to recognize these psychological concepts that are happening technically around them, but we're starting on something a little bit more, a little easier, right? We're talking about watching a show where they can focus on that. At the very, very beginning, I'll give them themes or areas of psychology, like this is social psychology, this is developmental psychology. So as they're getting used to it, they've got like a chapter to flip through or a text to flip through to help them kind of figure out what terms. But as we go along, they start finding terms all over the place, so I actually have stopped giving them areas to look into. And they're recognizing that these are things happening in real life. I'm like, right, that's the point. Because if you're talking with someone, then you realize, oh, they've got a cultural bias. That you can't address, or the approach that you're going to use might have to change, because this is someone who may not understand the way you're going to say something, or you now have to, like if I was going to talk about my idea of dress shoes in Hawaii, I have dress slippers. Of course, you guys all call them flip-flops, but to us, it's a pair of dress slippers, and it cost me like $100, and they're really pretty leather, and they've got great arch support and all these things. And by Hawaii standards, these are fancy shoes. But if I said slippers, you all are probably picturing, fuzzy things, right? So understanding the audience, that's another one, right? Understanding who you're talking to. And so while I sometimes get a little bit teased, I had a couple of I had one newspaper article in the local paper about my class, and then one that was about Rod, because the managing editor was actually just a really huge Star Trek fan, and I got him in to meet Rod, so he was really happy. But it was
find the Trek fans in media. That's the other secrecy.
That's the key. Yeah.
Right. But there were people who were posting like, well, how does this help our students to get a job? And I was just like, well, this is actually bigger than that. This is about how to get them to function in life, how to be, members of society that can interact and, not argue, understand how to, interact with other people. So it's fun. And I feel like I'm doing good work, but at the same time, I feel totally silly because it's Star Trek that I started watching with my dad when I was in single digits, in reruns. So
it's great. Those things can coexist. I want to share a couple of comments, and then we'll need to take our break here. But John Cooley in the comments, my daughter is almost 13. None of her contemporaries have even heard of Star Trek. This is a major problem. Followed by David Takechi saying, Starfleet Academy is really important, as is Prodigy. two most important. I'm getting old, and when I go away, I need someone to take over. I don't have kids, so I'm relying on these shows to draw in the next generation, so I am not the last one. I feel you, both of you. Nani, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Please call in anytime. You know, we're here Monday nights, starting next week, talking episode by episode about disco.
Looking forward to that.
Always welcome. Excellent. So we are going to do a quick bit of business here on the show and then welcome the rest of our callers standing by. We've got Paul and John Arminio, I believe, and Lou. So we will get to everybody in time. Nani, thank you. So many people in the chat saying thank you for your contributions here and saying please come back. So
Okay.
You can't let our audience
Thanks,
down.
Right. Great to be here. And Norman, you better show up to one of my classes one of these days.
I would love to. I would absolutely love to. Thank you so much for.
You were Rod approved, that's why. So you know.
Thank you.
I'll send you the link
next time. All right. Thanks, Nani.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, Norman, very quickly, we want to tell our listeners about everything that they can find on our Discord. And you get to our Discord through our Patreon, which is at patreon.com/missionlog. Do not miss out what's going on there. I mean, we've got all these fantastic text threads where people are chatting about everything from episodes of Star Trek to what we talk about on Mission Log to everything else, travel and food and other science fiction and other movies and all kinds of stuff. But we've got a really thriving live show schedule in Discord. What can people find there?
Well, I think almost every night we have a live show. And let's start off with one of the reasons why we created Discord was to create the After Dark show, which is a live chat of the podcast that drops that Thursday. So this Thursday will be Hope and Fear, the season finale of Voyager season 4. Mm-hmm. So please visit us there and join in on that conversation. And we also have Kontiki, which is our Wednesday night live convention / kind of like kitchen sink chat hosted by, we'll see Paul soon. In here in the live chat. And then we also have coming up, unless it's already started, Heather, if I'm wrong, please let me know. But we also have the Disco Discord, which is going to be review of Discovery's seasons 1 through 4 leading up to season 5. I'm pretty sure that that's already underway and everyone's going to be, highly anticipating the beginning of season 5 next week. So that and let's see. And what else do we have? I mean, it's
well. By the way, in the chat, Andrea saying, "Hey, Nora, musicals. We're talking musicals."
That's right. We did start a little bit of a chat with musicals. Now we have musicals and theater, which is one of our newer chats. Yes. And we have a lot of diverse interests and a lot of people that have a lot of passions. Oh, and also there was that one Friday night show that I co-host with Shara called the Zocalo, talking about Babylon 5. So I needed to downplay that a little bit, or else I just talk about
it's a great show. You've been doing it for a while. People, if you want to join patreon.com/missionlog, that is your key to get into Discord. And look, even if you don't join us in Discord, but we hope you do, that's the heart of it all. You still get the uncut episodes, the preview episodes a week early for Mission Log, previews for Genealogy as well, which is a fabulous show everybody should be listening to. So join us there at patreon.com/missionlog. We will see you there. And look, you mentioned it as if you just manifested him by mentioning his name, Paul Harveth, joining the call now. Paul,
well, remember, when you get 3 Pauls in chat, one of the Pauls appears. So
they have to. They just automatically show up. Paul, what? Oh, and by the way, Paul Troutwine saying Westerns. Don't forget we have Westerns chat as a thread there, of course. So, Paul Harveth, welcome to the show. What is on your mind tonight?
I'm with some of my favorite people in the world. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yeah, absolutely.
So, John, as you may notice, we have a special guest here in the green room, and he is now unmuted. Let's introduce our friend from Kontiki.
Yes.
Go ahead, Scott. Let us hear your name.
Hi, Larry. My name is Scott Palm, and I have been a Trekkie since I was 8. What do you know about Legacy?
Oh, right on. Hey, welcome, Scott Palm, friend of the show.
It is.
Absolutely love having you here. How are you, friend? And a well-placed question to our own Trexpert, Dr. Larry Nemecek. All right, Larry, the floor is yours. Scott has called you out. He wants to know your thoughts.
Okay, what was that? My thoughts on
Legacy.
Oh,
Uh,
Legacy is a good thing. This is how we keep up with. Oh, you mean Star Trek Legacy?
yes.
No, it would be an awesome show. It would tick so many boxes for so many generations of fans, newer people with the newer characters, the young LaForges, Seven, of course. Raffi, are you kidding? A 1-2 team there. Everybody else could traipse through and guest star still. Beverly, Picard, whoever wants to come through. But the reality is, people say, well, there was a huge storm of support for Anson Mount and Pike. And so we got, Strange New Worlds ahead of schedule, that the planned schedule is going on. Well, yes, and Section 31 had to move aside for that. And now you've got 2 to 3 series maybe on the launching pad. And I know that's disappointing to a lot of fans, but it's not the same. They're not throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. It's not 2018 anymore. And there are plans in place for these shows, and I know that disappoints a ton of fans. And I would so love to see Legacy, but Academy is these series had to wait for the strikes to be over, much less the pandemic, maybe. And they're going to be in queue. They're in the bullpen, and I'd love to see Legacy next up. And if everyone can hold on, I don't mean the fans, I mean the crew and the actors, if they can swing around in 3 or 4 or 5 years and do that, that's great. But it's just, unless something radically changes, that's just kind of the way of the world. And it's kind of sad to say that. And what I really don't like to see is when people show your love, show your passion for the Legacy format, but the militancy is just going to be counterproductive.
Can I tell you what my hope is for a legacy of, because I feel like, honestly, Star Trek Picard season 3, that was Star Trek Legacy. It just, we got it, right?
Yeah.
But if there is more to tell, and I believe that there is more of that story to tell, I think 7 of 9 is awesome. Definitely in my top 3 of favorite Star Trek characters of all time. So I think there is more to tell there. I would like to see Paramount Plus do something like 2 2-hour movies a year. And maybe one year you get 2 Legacy. We're calling it that, but it's the 7 of 9 Titan continued story. Maybe you get 2 of those. Or maybe one year you get 1 of those and you get a Section 31 or something else. Like, I don't know that we have to dedicate everything to a full series that then takes, 2 years between seasons.
Or even a 5 years later Discovery 2-hour movie.
Yeah.
That could be one
How cool would
solution
that
to see
be?
those. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You could do a 2-hour or like a 4-hour miniseries, and I think that would be cool. Alan in the chat very pointedly, just don't tear down the sets.
Yeah, keep Elliot Gould away from the sets.
Yes.
We don't want him on the sets, right?
Right. Norm, Paul, feelings about Scott's well-placed question?
Well, I want to share, everybody, if you watch this thing, you know my feelings about said product. I want to point out, Scott has wanted to be part of the show live for a while, and we met through here, and then through Discord and our show Con Tiki. Scott and I have become close friends over the past year, and he shared with me that he'd love to do Mission Log Live to surprise John, and the look on your face was worth it. It was just,
love it.
And Larry too. See you beaming. This is just Scott's time. I want to give him, if he's got, I'm here to fill in time so he can type. If you have anything left to say, Scott, one more little thing, and then we'll move over for John Arminio. Okay. But this has been a plan with Earl, and we worked it out, and I'm just happy it came off. And I want to just put out my love for Mission Log, the Discord, allowing me to make friends like this, allowing this to happen. Larry and I had great talks at Starbase Indy. His tremendous Trek files is must listen, as well as mission log is. So that's what I've got to say. And
I'm just Paul, man.
I'm a happy human being.
Paul, you've been so much of a rock in this community and doing stuff for our Vegas plans, which will go unmentioned here, and sharing your friendship throughout the Mission Log Discord and to our listeners. And I can't thank you enough. And to bring Scott on, Scott, man, such a pleasure to see you, and hopefully we get to do that in real life again before too long. Really appreciate it.
He's got one last thing to say. This is his universal sign. Here it comes.
All right.
Larry, you are a bonus.
There you go.
Well,
you are
well
the
done.
bonus. We should just have the shirt, the bonus.
Larry, the bonus.
Yes. I love it. I love it.
Thanks,
Awesome.
you all. We'll
Thank
see
you
again.
both.
Paul. Thanks, Scott.
Have
Great
a
seeing
great
you.
night, Scott. What a pleasure. Till next time, my friend. Be good, everybody. Wow. Only
Trek well,
here,
Scott.
Norman.
Right?
I love it. I love it. This is why we do this.
I have a quick and maybe controversial answer for you.
Yeah, bring it.
Because it's far from me to be controversial on our show. But here's the thing about so when I was in art school, a teacher of mine said, if you put a special effect in every panel, then every panel becomes unspecial. Right. And I'm wondering, okay, so I am not in agreement with a statement that I hear sometimes on social media or in discussions where all Star Trek is good Star Trek. I can't really agree with that because I do agree that when Star Trek is the Star Trek that I believe tells the right story or has the right message, I think that is great Star Trek. And I think that with the proliferation of so many shows, there's a higher chance, the odds are greater that not all Star Trek is going to be able to measure up to great standards. I think that's just the law of averages. And I'm wondering if it's just because it's a fantastic, powerful, lucrative license that Star Trek persists in media. Not because the message is getting out there, not because the fans are clamoring, demanding for more product, but it's because there's a bottom line to the franchise and the license. And I think that sometimes you're going to see a lot of quality being eroded based on that premise of we must continue the license. So now I'm not saying that those are mutually exclusive elements. I'm just saying that it's harder to see sometimes the message from the quantity as opposed to the quality. So I just want to put that out there for people to think about. You can disagree with me all you want. Make sure you send all the emails to John. But I think that there has to be at least that small voice of discontent. I'm not saying that I'm discontented with Star Trek, but just the other side of the argument in the equation.
I don't think you have to apologize, Norm. That's humanity. I mean, if we're going to have a Star Trek made by humans, I'm not saying let's have Star Trek made by AI, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, you're right.
Mean, two things real fast. One, in the 26 episode seasons, everybody knew, and everybody would acknowledge that out of 26, there would be 3 or 4 clinkers just from fatigue factor or on somebody's part or, whatever. And how many times, at least, going into Voyager, but between Voyager and Enterprise, Rick Berman himself said, we wanted to take a year off, and the network was pushing us to move. And that's a different paradigm. We're back in history with that landscape. But that's an example of yes. I mean, I'm sitting here remembering all the times that we had the Save Star Trek campaign in the ancient days, and all the time Star Trek's been on a bubble, and then was gone we had the fallow years for 12 years. It's like we're either like demanding it, or there's times when we say, let's maybe just like take a rest, take a break. You could have too much, or there's somebody that's focusing on the mercenary, if that's you're talking about, the capitalism of it, and not so much the quality. And that's all happened in the past already. And it's weird because we're sitting here worrying about Prodigy coming back for a 3rd year. What happened to Discovery? I mean, there's still, it's funny how it's mixed still. We're sitting here wanting to continue. And at the same time, what you're saying is, can there be too much? I mean, we've backed off from peak Trek, right? There won't be 50 fresh weeks a year, if you want to call them fresh.
Right.
But I think just by humanity in charge of it, you're going to have imperfections. It's the sum total that we hope to look at. But it's always been that way. And my God, third season of the original series.
That's true. That is fair.
By the way, folks, we are getting up toward the top of the hour. We might stay just like a minute longer, but we got 3 callers lined up, and I really want to get to at least one comment from each one. So let's welcome back to the show, John Arminio. John.
Hi, Mr. Champion.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm following a lot of heavy hitters here. So
what a night! What a night! Yeah. Well, what's on your mind?
As the streaming continues to be like for me frustrating as like rights for different properties change. Like I am aware that Star Trek it has a home on Paramount. But I think especially as people become or viewers become frustrated with just the streaming model in general, and as media and consuming content becomes more and more siloed, I think it's taking away what made Star Trek special as in the original series, because when you only had 3, I know this is a 50-year-old comment, but when Star Trek the original series was on TV, it was sort of like forcing that social commentary into America's living rooms. From the Corbomite maneuver to Let That Be Your Last Battlefield to just the makeup of the crew, no matter what your progressive or racist views were, that was being beamed into your TV. And now with the streaming model, you can avoid anything that challenges your worldview. And so now I think, as much as I love Star Trek and as much as I'm glad that people who want Prodigy, who want Lower Decks, who want Discovery can have all those things, it seems like the social commentary aspect of Star Trek is preaching to the choir more than ever. And I think that takes away some of the cultural import that it had when there were just less options.
Man, you and I could start a club. Because it's so interesting. As you're saying that, I feel like we've all had that conversation about Star Trek, about TV and media in general. I come from a publishing background. I think of the same thing in terms of just print media as well, which is a dying medium as it is, but going from curated, well-articulated, well-researched, thoughtful journalism down to the narrow casting of a message specifically to the audience that just wants to hear what you have to say because it feeds what they already are expecting. And looking at Star Trek that way it's a bit of a challenge. Yeah.
I mean, I think those observations, John, are amazing. I just wanted to say that those are amazing observations, John.
Yeah.
Thank you.
In a small way, that's why I was excited to have Prodigy bust out and be on, Nickelodeon at first, now Netflix. So we'll see, in a small way.
Yeah. I had hoped that the Nickelodeon splash would have been bigger and better handled for Prodigy, because that was a real opportunity for just a completely new audience, and kind of unexpectedly to get that bit of Star Trek in their lives. But now, I mean, there are so many Star Trek fans that I talk to, and you say, oh, have you caught Strange New Worlds? Have you caught the end of Discovery? And they just don't even know.
Yeah.
They just don't even know that exists, or even if they did, they don't know how to get it.
Much to John's, I'm sorry, John, but much to your point, though, and much to, I was about to say John, but both Johns, it's that whole, I think I was talking about this with Earl. We were talking about there's the proliferation of so many good quality shows, but the thing is, you can just say, I'm just going to put that in my queue. I'll watch it later, and all of a sudden, there's the break where you don't get Star Trek for another year. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, I'm catching up with this old Star Trek. Now I'm out of the conversation of the new Star Trek. And I think that John Arminio, your point is so good about the being having a captive audience being challenged to watch that show because it's the only show of its kind saying what it needs to say to an audience, and in that very the very personal way. And when you put things to the side, out of sight is out of mind, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And not only do you lose track of the message, you lose track of the conversation, right?
Yeah.
That conversation is way past you, or you never have it at all. And I think that's probably one of the most dangerous things about something about Star Trek, because it's always been about the conversation.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
The water cooler.
Yeah.
They got to keep them weekly drops. They can't do a whole. I hope Netflix treats Prodigy as a weekly drop and not, the new shows, the new episodes.
Exactly. John, I hate to cut this short because I feel like we could do an hour on this topic alone, but that's what you do when you call us.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. We got 2 more callers lined up. If we can all just stay like a couple of minutes later, we want to get a taste of what they're going to share with us. So we'll jump over to Lou here real quick. Lou, what's on your mind? What's up? And you're muted. All right. Lou, stand by. And Earl, I will have you bring in Mark if Mark is still with us. And then we will jump back over to Lou if we can. Do we have Mark? Well, guys, this is what we do. This is what we call vamping in the meantime.
That's right.
To see. All right. Here is Mark. Welcome to the show, Mark. And I hope that cupcake was perfection. So
yes.
good.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, the plate to prove it. There you go.
Okay.
Oh,
there you go.
There you go.
All right. Formerly occupied by a
The
cupcake.
proof is in the cupcake plate.
There you go.
I just wanted to quickly talk about, as both hosts know, and I'll say it out there, I just finished my Master's of Community Urban Planning degree on looking at accessibility in planning towards dyslexia and autism. And it's been making me wonder, now that I am in a planning mindscape of designing cities and other things, what future shows of Star Trek, as we increasingly understand both the physical, but especially the invisible disabilities like neurodiversity, what sets, what a set for the future of the Starfleet Academy would look like for students that could reflect, these not only the diversity of the cast, but the diversity of the aliens, but the diversity of people with disabilities as well. And I wonder what, that might look like. And I realize we don't have a long time to talk about this, but I just think it's such a neat concept to see, going back and seeing the old Star Trek and seeing how they did things to how in the 21st century Star Trek, how we might do things.
Agreed. I absolutely love that. Thanks for calling in with that comment. Well, we will.
Congrats on your degree.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think as far as our callers go, we'll need to cut it there. And Larry and Norm, I will leave it to the two of you with any final thoughts on the state of Trek.
I was a little down to lose so much fresh Trek, but there was a point there where they were overlapping the old series out and going out the door with the new coming in. And I thought, maybe just having 2 or 3 of these 10-episode runs might not be a bad thing. And there's also been more talk lately. I've seen some of the producers talking about maybe we can do a 12 or maybe an 18 episode season without going back to some of the old stresses of too many, but give people more than 10 and give people more than a couple of months worth of episodes before you wait another year. So, it's all in flux. The strikes exposed that Netflix and no one has a master plan for how streaming is supposed to work. The emperor has no clothes, and it's an interesting technology, and the money, the business plan is still being worked out. So it's like there's no hard and fast. I think the manual's still being written. We'll see.
Agreed.
What I'm hoping for is something that I want to go back to John Arminio's point, about the captive audience, like destination TV about Star Trek, because the one thing that I've always been concerned about with so many series is what makes Star Trek special. And I know that's special for everybody, and I'm only speaking in generalities, but at the same time, when Star Trek The Next Generation was being broadcast, it was the only series And even when Deep Space Nine overlapped with it, it's new because it's never been spun off, in a consecutive time frame, in real time to the series. So all eyes, all fandom from Star Trek was aimed directly at that peer-to-peer, enjoyment of the series as it's unfolding, and then the conversation goes from there. But now you have all of these different pockets of Star Trek fans, and they're not all talking to each other, let's be honest, right? And there's a lot of protectivism. And I really want it to be that destination TV viewing experience again, where you want to sit down, you want to turn everything off, turn off the phone, turn off the lights, put the pets away, and just have that message dialed right into you. And I know that's very naive to say, especially in today's culture. But I think in order for Star Trek to really grow, we have to be able to grow outside of the Star Trek community. That community has been captured. That audience is firmly entrenched in the brand. What's the next Star Trek experience going to be to get that new audience, like Nami was talking about? Because without that new audience, like John said, we're just speaking to the same choir, right? And this choir knows all of the psalm, right? All of it. As good as it is, as robust as it is, it's still the same audience, right?
Well said. And hey, thank you. Wow. Everybody in the chat tonight, everybody who called in, you folks were on fire. So let's do it again next week, okay? Mission Log Live is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. Technical production on Mission Log and Mission Log Live by the ineludible. I tripped on my own word. The ineludible Earl Green. Be sure to visit podcast.roddenberry.com for the latest from Roddenberry Podcasts. If you would like to support Mission Log directly, give us a look at patreon.com/Mission Log. Thanks to everyone who joined us live or later. We look forward to seeing you all kick off Discovery Season 5 with us next week.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.